Good morning. Welcome to another morning of Breakfast Central. Thank you for starting your morning with us. We have a number of stories to look through, some brand new. Majority of them are stories we've been tracking. I would like to get your reaction on Twitter, on social media at News Central TV. I'm Olive Emodiani. Welcome to the show.
And I am Osal Gilbon, welcoming you to Thursday morning's breakfast as well. We hope that you enjoy the next 2 hours with us. Now, just before we get into our top stories and share with you also breakfast headlines, some other things, that we are focusing on, or, we'll share our brief comments on the side. One of the stories on the Daily Trust newspapers yesterday that I believe should maybe be a national conversation at this point, is the need for some level of auditing for the NNPC and, certain, institutions across Nigeria. I think I'm of a strong opinion that if we did a proper auditing of the institutions in Nigeria, the hell that would break loose would almost never be, controllable. It would stink to high heavens. I'm seemingly this morning joining voices with those who have called for an auditing of these institutions and these government agencies, so we'll know exactly how much Nigeria might be losing through the different loopholes and the different leakages that occur in government. If you remember on the Daily Trust newspapers yesterday, it said the Senate is investigating an 8.4 trillion naira that has been withheld by the NNPC and 3.6 trillion naira in unremitted taxes. But it's not, just those figures. It's a long history of these, seeming discrepancies with the figures coming from these government institutions. Sometime a while ago, now former governor of Edo State, Governor Obaseki, was asked to, leading a report, that of course was set up by the NEC. This report, of course, was meant to investigate the NNPC and investigate, our oil income, of some sort. And of course, some of their findings show that Nigeria, in a 6-month period, had lost about $1.5 billion as a result of poor auditing and poor metering, to understand how much oil leaves Nigeria, how much oil is distilled rather, is produced rather, and then how much leaves Nigeria, how much do we have left. It's just, a lot of discrepancy, just a lot of confusion with the whole sector that I believe needs to be taken a closer look at. And I'm going to do a proper story on this, I believe, or a proper, maybe Which Way Nigeria monologue on this sometime in the very, very near future. It's important that these questions are asked. It's important that, Mr. President takes it as one of his core mandates to ensure that Nigerians know exactly what might be going on with the books and with the finances across Nigeria's institutions, but of course, majorly with its oil and gas sector. That, along with other things that, are going to come up this morning. One other thing, that I think, we're going to be highlighting, of course, is the confusion with the Port Harcourt Refinery once again. It is still making conversations across Nigeria. Is the Port Harcourt Refinery truly refining, crude oil? How many trucks have, been able to get petrol from the Port Harcourt Refinery and are now able to deliver to the Nigerian market? Why is there still confusion? Yeah, that's still speculation.
So they're up and running, 70% up.
Again, it's still speculation, because if you remember, I think it was in the news yesterday, Pengerson saying, let me quickly find that news story. There's a news story anyway from Pengerson saying that they confirmed, yes, it says they confirmed Port Harcourt Refinery is operational, but it lacks the reformer unit crucial for direct petrol production, which makes it resort to blending processes. And so the reason that I'm bringing this up again is because when Dangote's refinery started, there wasn't any confusion about blending. There wasn't any conversation about blending. I remember that the Melekiari also said there's nothing wrong with blending. It's a part of the process. But many energy experts, have countered him to say that is not entirely true. It's a completely different process, and it's not. It doesn't paint the picture of a fully functional refinery or even a 70% functional refinery that is refining crude and producing PMS. And so these things should not simply be pushed away. I am not an energy expert, and I wouldn't claim to be. I remember that there was also a story that I saw that the Nigerian government had taken news media to the Port Harcourt Refinery and showed them that it was, fully produced, or it was producing to some extent. But, how many of these journalists, how many of these persons in the media are energy experts? If I go to Port Harcourt Refinery and they point 3 things to me and say, this is working, I'll say, okay, it's working. And I'll go home and probably, tell people at home.
I think we also as media have a role to play. So people who are experts in that field need to go and do investigations and tell the stories. Because all you can take until you see something different is what NNPCL has said.
Yeah, that's my point. But what I'm saying is, or what I'm highlighting in that particular report is that many of the people that will go through that process do not know better. They're not energy experts. They don't know much about, how a refinery should function. So if I go through the Port Harcourt Refinery, yes.
No, I disagree. There are people who are like, their beat is energy, right? That's their area of expertise. So if they go there, they know what to look out for because they've been covering this story for the longest time. They've been doing research and investigation in the
they know the entire functionalities of refinery.
For the most part,
they will be able to tell the difference between petroleum that is produced or crude oil PMS rather produced through blending and the one produced through refining.
So part of their research would include them being there to watch the process. The same way that Dangote said, for example, that if you doubted the quality of his product, that you can stop by, like he said to the the House of Representatives, I believe, told them to stop by at any time. And I think that they did, and he took them on a tour, and they followed the process of, it being refined, I believe. So I would think that we also have a responsibility to, if you feel that there's something different, as media people, to go there and verify, like they say.
Yeah, but again, it is about the level of expertise that you have.
Well, I don't have. But
I don't either.
But there are people that have it.
I don't know that there has been anyone, and this is not, knocking, our colleagues in the media. I'm just saying that I don't know that there has been anyone that has gone there.
There is.
That is an expert.
Yes, there is. I know of one. He's in a sister station. Yeah, I know. I think his name is Olumide. Yeah, I certainly know of one.
Again, I'm not taking it hook, line, and sinker.
Okay.
And the level of scrutiny that this one has had to go through, the argument whether it is blending or it is actual refining, didn't happen with Dangote's refinery because there wasn't much to hide, I believe, because there wasn't any confusion as to whether this is producing, because trucks went there and actually got petrol, and they've still continued to go there to get petrol.
And I hear you. I'm not holding brief for NNPC. What I'm saying in essence,
I know you're not.
Is that, and I can understand why you feel skeptical and why Nigerians generally will feel that level of skepticism is because, first of all, they missed their deadlines for seven consecutive times. Each time they said they were going to rule, they missed their deadline. So there are a number of areas, and I agree with you that, yes, some level of auditing does need to occur. I also just want to believe that for now, until we have tangible contrary evidence, I'll stick to the story that's been told. But I want us to shift away from NNPC.
But the story that's been told, according to Pengerson, is that they're not actually refining, they're blending. So it's not like there's a story that says there's no blending whatsoever, they're actually refining. Okay,
but I want us to move a little bit and talk a bit about Dele Farotimi, because between yesterday and today, there's been an update. As at yesterday, he had been, the update that we had for you was that he had been arrested in Lagos, hauled to Ekiti, and was being detained in Ekiti for allegations of libel, defamation. As at today, he's been tried he's been brought before a court, and he'll be detained for till the 10th of December, where his bail application will be heard. We've seen the myriad of reactions on social media to this. The hashtag #FreeDeleRotimi has started to trend. Dele Farotimi, I beg your pardon, has started to trend. I think the unintended consequence of what this has done is that it has publicized his book in ways that I'm sure that he himself would probably not have even been able to imagine. One of the bookstores that sells his book, their website crashed. It crashed because of the amount of orders that people had purchased. Then reiterates the fact that people would say no publicity is bad publicity. But then again, I think that the key area there is to look at the fact that the speed with which Dele Farotimi was tried. Here on this show, we've talked about tons of politicians. Case in point, the most recent being Yahaya Bello, and how they kept going in circles. Dele Faratimi was brought before the court. Well, I mean, that should be the typical order of the day. When you have someone arrested, you should be able to present them to court. So yes, I'd applaud them for doing the right thing, bringing him before court in 24 hours. However, you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. The defamatory material, that is the book here, the publication, occurred in Lagos. So make it make sense that a crime occurred in Lagos. You came and picked the person up and bundled him to Ekiti. So these are the areas that are being highlighted and being criticized, especially because the person in this instance is a lawyer, and many would assume that being that he's a lawyer and a learned silk at that things would have been handled differently. I was reading about how all of this started, and interestingly, I found that it was one of the lawyers in his chambers that on a flight had bought the book, I think either on the flight, but had bought the book at the airport or something like that. I was reading the book and then drew his attention to it and said, "Sir, they have defamed you in this book." And then there were a number of other people who had read the book as well that started reaching out to him, and people started drawing his attention to the interviews that Dele Faratimi was granting and the press. In Lagos, defamation was a crime, but according to after the administration of criminal justice law in Lagos, it no longer became a crime. So if it is not a crime and he's been bundled and it's been treated like a crime, these are some of the arguments for and against. There are those who are against Dele Faratimi who would talk about the weight of the allegation, saying he who alleges must prove. That if you allege that a learned SAN had gotten fraudulent judgment, you should be able to prove how he got this fraudulent judgment. So the arguments will keep going back and forth, but the one thing that everybody can agree upon is the fact that the police has acted out of order. The police has acted as an instrument in the hands of the elites in manipulating and infringing on the fundamental human rights of Nigerian citizens. And in this case, Dele Faratimi, and not just him, but also the lawyers in the firm where he worked, the staff, the cleaner who was attacked by a policeman, who was hit by a policeman, her phones collected from her, a number of their phones collected from them. You can effect arrest, but not steal in the course of effecting arrest, and not infringe on people's rights whilst effecting the arrest, especially in this case where these are not people that were caught in the course of the commission of a crime. It wasn't like there was a violent crime being committed and you needed to apply force to stop them. No, there was no such thing. So the question is if the police will do anything about the crimes that they have committed as well, because they've assaulted Nigerian citizens, they've stolen from Nigerian citizens. If there'll be investigation done in this regard, if the police will be made to apologize, to also not just apologize, but also made to pay for the actions that they have, caused, and the harm that they have caused these Nigerian citizens. I think that these are the areas that we'll keep talking about. But for now, the update that we have is that Dele Faratimi is still held in custody, and his bail application will be heard on the 10th of December. Speaking of 10th of December, Omoyele Sowore has called for another round of protests to occur in different strategic points, here in Lagos, in Ekiti, and in London. And he's scheduled it for the 10th of December. I guess in a few days we'll find out if Nigerians will be willing to turn up for the protest. There are those who are applauding him for doing that, and there are those who are saying that, are criticizing him, saying that the protest will have no effect because of the delay. I can see the sense in which he will make it the 10th, because that's the day that Dele Faratimi's bail application will be heard. But there are those who would argue that this time is too much, and it gives those who are infringing on the rights of Nigerian citizens too much time to be able to plan their backup or their response to whatever sort of protest might occur.
There's also I think the points that many people are making, is that they just see a lot of red flags with the way that the process has been handled. And it once again gives more fuel to those who say that Nigeria's Administrative Criminal Justice Act, and of course the justice sector generally, needs an overhaul, and that there are certain people who have continued to use the loopholes in the system to and of course abuse those loopholes in the system to oppress certain people. Those are the points that many people are making. Defamation, yes, might be a criminal offense, but it is a bailable offense in Nigeria, and so it's difficult to understand why.
Now, not in Lagos. anymore.
Well, you know, the victim of the crime, the way it said is domiciled in Ekiti. The defamation affected him in Ekiti, and of course he made the complaint in Ekiti. So that is the narrative that they were used to back up the reason Ekiti State Police got involved, basically. Anyway, there are conversations that we will expand upon, and of course, once again, giving my voice to those who say proper auditing needs to be done to many of Nigeria's institutions. Let's share with you what our top stories are this morning as we get into Breakfast Central. This morning, President Tinubu orders a review of the controversial tax reform bill. And court remands Dele Farotimi for allegedly defaming Afe Babalola. Also this morning, the Senate confirms appointment of Uluyede as Chief of Army Staff. And NNPC clears air of operation of Port Harcourt Refinery. We'll also be taking you through the newspaper front pages this morning, sharing with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria.
Nigeria's National Petroleum Company Limited has dismissed allegations of misleading the public over the commencement of operations of the old Port Harcourt Refinery in Rivers State, southern Nigeria. The NNPCL, during a tour of the facility with newsmen in Port Harcourt, the state capital, says that the plant is fully operational and has commenced distillation of petroleum products and truck out of petrol to a storage depot. Amadine Uyi brings more in this report.
It was a clear-the-air tour of the Port Harcourt Refinery complex in Rivers State. The visitor afforded newsmen in attendance a first-hand view of the entire process ongoing at the refinery, which many have remained skeptical over its operation. Staff of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited say there is no cause for alarm as the refinery has fully commenced operation.
Good news for us all as Nigerians is that the plant is working, our products are being refined, the Port Harcourt refinery is on stream, and we are all happy and we are good to go. And what I tell people is, for us as a responsible energy company, is for us to tell the truth. We have no reason to lie.
So, like you see from the visit today, we went straight from the control room, where we've upgraded the control room to 20th century control system, to the depot, where we saw trucks loading out. And that's a demonstration and a testament that NNPC, we can make things happen, we make things work, and with the support of every single staff, both retired and currently employed, we're able to pull off the revamp of the old Port Harcourt refinery.
Yes, it's just a misconception. The plant is fully on stream, as all the guests who have come in have seen, and producing very good quality products, and we're trucking out. So let the message go out there that Port Harcourt Refinery is back, efficiently back.
The NNPCL also took time to clear the air on allegations making the rounds over the refinery blending process, saying the report has steeped in ignorance.
PMS is basically blended. The last phase of any refining operation is finishing. And in finishing, you make it to the spec you want, basically by blending what you produce directly from your plant. So blending to produce PMS is the norm in the industry.
Every refinery in the world, they do what we call blending. Blending is a refinery process. So what we're doing here is not out of norm. It's a normal refinery process that we're following. And what we try to do as much as possible is to make sure that we don't do this in isolation. We work with our regulators, the NNPCL, to make sure that the products we churn out to the Nigerian public meets the specifications that are required before we truck out.
The NNPCL says that it has set its sight on the new Port Harcourt refinery, which is also undergoing repairs, and is optimistic that just like the old refinery complex, it will soon be on stream. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Thank you, Amadine, for that report. We'll continue to track stories and updates regarding the NNPCL, and in particular, Port Harcourt Refinery. But now let's move on to another story. Human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi was, of course, remanded in prison yesterday by Chief Magistrates Court in Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti State. This is over allegations of defaming Chief Afe Babalola, a senior advocate of Nigeria and founder of Afe Babalola University. Recall that Farotimi was arrested at his office in Lagos on Tuesday and taken to Ado-Ekiti prior to his quote-unquote abduction. He held a press briefing where the outspoken government critic spoke on the court injunctions that would eventually lead to his arrest. Let's take a look. Right here is the video that was filmed at the moment, the CCTV footage at the moment where he was arrested at his law firm in Lagos. We'll bring you the clip of Dele Farotimi speaking about this, but let's tell you that Afe Babalola had submitted a petition claiming that Farotimi's book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System, accuses Babalola of influencing the Supreme Court to secure a fraudulent judgment.
Farotimi has pleaded not guilty to the 16 charges brought against him by the police. The Chief Magistrate, Abayomi Adeosun, directed that Farotimi be held at the Ado-Ekiti Correctional Center while a formal bail application is submitted. The court is expected to consider the application on the 10th of December. Joining us this morning is human rights lawyer Inibehe Efyong. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's, have you clarify, some of the confusion surrounding, this arrest of Dele Farotimi and the connection with Ekiti State. I think it's a fair place to start from. Many people have said that, Ekiti State Police has no business in Lagos. Dele Farotimi, of course, argued pretty much the same thing, that whatever it is he's accused of happened here in Lagos. So, what is the connection with Ekiti? And did you see anything wrong with him being taken from Lagos to Ekiti State, where he's now being held?
Thank you. By law, there are circumstances under which a person may be taken from one state to another for purpose of criminal prosecution. For example, where interstate offenses are committed, or where a crime is committed in the course of a journey in transit, where someone moves from one state to the other to commit an offense. In that kind of circumstance, that person or the suspect may be traced to a particular location and be moved to the actual state where the offense may have been committed or may have been partly committed. But why this is been worrying for us is that in the Dele Farotimi's case, it does appear that there is a strategy to basically try him in a jurisdiction where the chances of him getting justice is not very high. And I say that with all sense of responsibility. We will only be pretending and be engaging in self-deceit to say that the eminent senior advocate of Nigeria, Chief Afe Babalola, does not have control over Ekiti State. This is an elder statesman that successive governors of the state have basically been not showing. They basically bow before him. You may have recalled his altercation with former Governor Fayemi. And after that, other governors who have also governed Ekiti State in recent years have basically had to pay obeisance to the very, highly placed Chief Afe Babalola. So we are not just dealing with an elder from Ekiti State. We are dealing with a man who more or less is richer than Ekiti State. A man who is possibly the most senior lawyer in Nigeria today, and possibly the most senior advocates of Nigeria today. So that is the caliber of person that we are dealing with. So when you want to pretend that trying him in his own state, right, does not have any implication for the defendant, I think that is just being pretentious. But let's even look at the legality of the matter. Now, They are claiming, because I have seen the draft of the petition that Chief Africa Olola personally submitted to the police. Now, he is claiming that some persons, his partner, bought lawyers in his law firm bought the book published by Dele Farrell entitled Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System, and they drew his attention to it, and so on and so forth. He is based in Ekiti State, so on that basis, he wrote a petition to the Commissioner of Police of Ekiti. Now, under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015, you cannot arrest a person in one state and move that person to another state without taking that person first to a magistrate in the state of arrest. That is the state where the arrest is to be effected. In this instance, when the police came into Lagos from Ekiti, they ought to have complied with both administrative procedure and legal procedure. Administratively, under the police regulation, when police is moving from one state to another to effect an arrest, when they succeed in arresting that, before they even go to arrest the person, they are supposed to go to the police in the command in the state where the arrest is effected to incident the matter, to basically file a report that we have come into your state in order to effect arrest of so and so person. From what we have now known, both the Lagos State Command and even the Zone 2 in Lagos were not carried along. They were blind, sidestepping the entire process. That is on the administrative side. But the most worrying is the judicial procedure, which is that under the law, as they came into Ekiti and arrested him, that is assuming that they even had an arrest warrant, they should have taken him, before they can execute that warrant by law, they should have taken him before a magistrate in Lagos, because this matter in Ekiti is being prosecuted at the magistrate court. It would have been different if it was a warrant issued by a federal high court, or if he was arrested on the order of the federal high court, in which case it will have a national application. But because this is a matter issued by an inferior court of record in Ekiti, the law demands that they should have taken him before another magistrate in Lagos to examine the warrant, examine the basis for the arrest, and even see whether it should be taken or not. This was not done. They just simply went to his place, arrested him, and then drove him for several hours all the way to Ekiti. And then they arraigned him yesterday. Guess what? When they arraigned him, the magistrate declined to admit him to bail after an oral bail application was made, and insisted that a formal bail application should be brought. That is that the application should be made in writing, which for me, like I said in a statement on X yesterday, it has only aggravated the fears, the apprehension, the anxiety of Nigerians who are justifiably concerned whether Mr. Farrell can get justice in Ekiti. Because why do you need a formal bail application in a magistrate court in the first place? And why do you even need a formal bail application in an offense of defamation? It's not charged for housebreaking. It's not charged for any serious offense that carries a serious penalty in law. It's charged for defamation. So why do you need a formal bail application? And then you are adjourning the matter for about 1 week. That for me, makes some of us wonder whether this is really a legitimate criminal process or just a sham that has been orchestrated to break the spirits, and silence the voice of Mr. Dele Farrell. But guess what? If a man is making allegations against the judiciary and is being tried by the same judiciary, common sense enjoins, common sense presupposes that the judiciary should ensure that this person is accorded all the protections under the law, that any appearance of impropriety, any appearance of persecution is avoided. But from the arrest to the arraignment and the way the matter is going so far, it looks like there is now a deliberate attempt to vindicate Dele Farrell, at least to speak to the point that the Nigerian judiciary, the justice system in our country, the entire criminal justice system itself is one that is susceptible to abuse, is one that can be weaponized. And I have made the point that if Chief Africa Olola really felt that this man has defamed him, what's stopping him from going to court to file a civil suit? Why should the machinery of the state be deployed to protect the reputation of a private citizen.
All right, Inibe, I'd like to interject at this point, and you've mentioned a number of wrongs, and hopefully we'll have enough time to talk about what the remedies are. But you said that if Chief Afe Babalola SAN feels like a wrong has been committed, he should file a civil suit. And that's another issue of contention here, that those would argue that defamation can be criminal and civil. But then the argument against that would be that it probably was criminal in southern Nigeria before up until the Criminal Law of Lagos 2011. But we'd like to get your thoughts, looking at the subject matter, which is this book that was published, talking about Nigeria's justice system. And he allegedly, defamed Chief Afe Babalola SAN. Is this a criminal action? Is this a civil action?
Well, there's what we call in literature poetic license. I did literature in school, and I know that authors have the right to express their views the way they deem fit. That does not mean that they are clothed with immunity to just write anything they want. But I would have thought that this should be a civil matter. They are not just saying that, oh, you posted something on the internet or wrote an article in the newspaper. This is a book that is published, an authored book, right? Where he had given an account of his experience in a matter that he did involving Chief Afe Babalola and a couple of other lawyers and the Supreme Court. So if the chief is convinced that what is published there is false, he could have just simplified. This could have been handled with a civil suit. I have always maintained a principled position against deploying state apparatus, for the purpose of making a case of libel or a case of defamation, rather. I have never supported that. So if he's saying that what is published in this book is false, he should have filed a civil suit. This would be better tackled in a civil court. It's not a matter that you go and throw him inside the correctional center, the considered center in the kitchen, just to demonstrate that you have connections with the higher marks. How many Nigerians have been their thousands? I have been defamed so many times, both on social media and outside social media. So are you saying that every time someone makes an allegation against me that is false, I should go and use the police to arrest the person? I just see it as a misplacement of priority. And for a man of that age, someone that is well over 80 years, I don't think he should be trying to build his legacy, right? I don't think that, this chapter of his life should be, about this kind of case. For a man that owns one of the best private universities in the country, for a man that had a center, I think in Oxford University, after him, for human rights, I don't think this should be his preoccupation. So I quarrel with the substance of the case. I quarrel more particularly with the procedure that is being deployed. Because what are they talking about? the NNPCL that is talking to you, I am also a victim of the Nigerian justice system. So the day I will write my own book, who knows whether it's Nigerian armed forces that will be used to arrest? Because one day I will tell my story. And when I will tell my story in a book form, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I will be as blunt as I can. The person that is talking to you, I am talking to you as a witness to the fact that the Nigerian justice system is very far from perfection, that the Nigerian justice system can be weaponized. That is not to say that all the judges and all the justices in Nigeria are corrupt, or that everybody sitting on the bench is compromised. That is not the point. I'm just speaking to the limited personal experience that I've had. On the basis of falsehood, on the basis of persecution. So if I now wake up tomorrow and choose to put my experience into a book, some people will feel that I've defamed them. So the response will be to go to the police to arrest me. Yeah. I'm just narrating to you that so many of us have experiences with the justice system that if we want to write about it, a lot of people will be offended. And I'm saying that should not be the business of the police. Yeah. I'm not speaking to the merit of the book itself, the substance, whether it's true or not. The matter has been taken before a court. So, Chief, and let me also tell you, Chief Afe Babalola is also on trial, because when you are alleging defamation, you are basically putting your reputation to test. Yeah. You're putting your reputation to test.
I want you to, I don't know if we can. Yeah, I'm not sure if we have the clip, of interview that Dele Fayotimi, gave just before his arrest, where he spoke about how the criminal justice system is, seemingly flawed. I think we played maybe the first, 10, 15 seconds, the parts where he's talking about a case, a petition being made secretly in a court somewhere, and then, of course, the suspect is not aware, that he has a case to answer until, there's now a warrant given for his arrest. So I think we can quickly play that and have Mr. Effiong respond to that.
To my knowledge that there is a charge that had been fraudulently preferred against me before a court in Ekiti State at the instance of Chief Afe Babalola. This charge had been fraudulently preferred, hidden from view, and the court had purportedly demanded my presence multiple times, and I had failed to appear before this court. And this court had then proceeded to issue a bench warrant for my arrest. This is classic Afe Babalola. I detailed his corruptive influence in my book, Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. And what he has done is exactly what he has always done in hiding, but he has done it this time again, and the calculations were that I would have been picked up, taken before this judge who must have either been compromised or misled in Ekiti. And I would have been remanded in prison custody for being somebody who was meant to face trial and who had refused to bring himself to court.
Yeah. I think, that's the part that I wanted to highlight. So, Effiong, is that something that you're familiar with? And, how weighty, is that statement by Dele Farotimi?
Well, you know that I have a close relationship with Dele Farotimi. We in the human rights community or in the activist space in quotes, we fraternize among ourselves. So I know him, and prior to the arrest, I was privy to some of the things you just listened to in the clip. He had carried me along. He had briefed me from when they started about these plans to have him arrested. And it is looking like some of the things he said is now, is now manifesting. And people are now asking whether, truly things can be that bad. But my concern is that for a person who is not in custody, if you want to try that person, the law demands that you are supposed to serve a summons on that person. For a defendant who is not in custody, for the purpose of compelling the attendance of that person in court, or the appearance of that person before the magistrate or a judge, they should have served him with a summons or a notice of trial and a copy of whatever charge they wanted to file against. So they just hurriedly went and, filed this 16-count charge of defamation against him. No opportunity for him to even review the charge, to see whether they are objectionable on the face of it or not, to see whether the court is bereft of jurisdiction to entertain the charge or not. He was not afforded the adequate time and facility to prepare for his defense, because that right inures, the constitutional right under Section 36, that inures from the moment a person is brought before a court, or in fact, even before a person is brought before a court, he should have notice of his arraignment. Dele Farotimi was not afforded that opportunity. So all this was orchestrated, by a very compromised police institution to achieve a predetermined objective. And that is why I asked a rhetorical question last night on X. Is Dele Farotimi going to get justice in Ekiti State? Or are we dealing with a fate? Are we going to be, thrown into a fait accompli? Has his fate been sealed already? Are we just waiting for the inevitable to happen? Will he get a fair trial? Will he have an opportunity to have his day in court? Because the signs I'm seeing already are very troubling. And I have highlighted to you that I do not understand why the magistrate had to adjourn for 1 week in order for a written application for bail to be filed. Whereas before that same magistrate, every day, 20 people are brought before him, even for more serious offenses, he's admitting them to bail upon oral application. Why is the distinction made for Dele Farotimi, a senior lawyer of the standing, a member of the legal profession, an officer of that court, a minister in the Temple of Justice? Why was his own case treated in that manner. So I question the manner that is being treated, and I do not believe that this is a legitimate, criminal process that has been initiated against him.
Jump in at this point, if I may jump in at this point, Nibehe, I think we can agree that several wrongs have been established. Now, in this case, both parties are lawyers. The learned SAN and Dele Farotimi here are lawyers. The NBA has taken a stance. They've said that libel is not a criminal offense. Libel is not a crime. So talk to us about what remedies would, what the remedies would be in this situation for Dele Farotimi and for the learned SAN in this case. Also, are there actions that should be taken? Since there are wrongs that have been done, are there certain actions that need to be taken, for both parties?
I think they're underestimating the forces behind it. and I laugh because it also looks as if they're underestimating the spirit of the man called Dele Farotimi. I'm not sure they understand how deeply ideological the Dele Farotimi is. If you look at even the hairstyle he used to keep, the afro, the kind of hairstyle, that was an act of rebellion, an act of protest. Here is a man who on his own abandoned active legal practice in protest because he said he could no longer stand what was happening. So this is not somebody that you can just play with and feel that he can be intimidated. So I believe that some actions will be taken to protect what has happened and to also ensure this matter is not going to die off. So if they think, oh, let them talk, after 24 hours they will get tired, they are going to be shocked, because I can assure you that within the human rights community, all the forces have been mobilized. People are not going to let this go because this is one voice that our country needs. We will not wait and see that voice being silenced. We have learned from experiences of others, and we're not going to also allow harm to come to him. So anybody who is trying to orchestrate any attack on the person of Dele Farotimi should know that we are watching. The eyes of the nation are upon the Ekiti State Judiciary. The whole world is watching to see the outcome of this process. And they must be mindful that if a man is accusing the judiciary of wrongdoing and is brought before the same judiciary, as I said, common sense detects that it should be treated in the best possible way. It should be given all rights, accorded all rights and privileges to which is entitled to under the law. Chibafeba Olola has used the police to file this charge. It will be an opportunity for quite a lot of things to come to light. So let nobody be mistaken that Dele Farotimi's spirit will be broken. I know him to be a deeply ideological man, a deeply
Right. We might be struggling with the connection there, but I believe it's also a good place to end the conversation this morning. We, of course, had those important parts that we needed to highlight. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We'll follow up and see where this story goes, and of course, we'd love to have you join us again as soon as possible. Thanks once again for your time.
Thank you, Nibehe.
All right. Now, moving on, the Nigerian Senate has set up a special committee to work with the federal government in resolving issues surrounding the tax reform bills. This decision was made known by the Deputy Senate President Jibrin Baro during a plenary session yesterday. The committee, which includes all Senate leadership and other members, will meet with the executive branch today at the National Assembly to address concerns and resolve gray areas. President
Bola Tinubu had earlier directed the Ministry of Justice to work with lawmakers to address concerns raised by various stakeholders. The tax reform bills have been a subject of controversy, with northern governors rejecting them, describing them as unfavorable to the northern region. The bills aim to overhaul the country's tax system, but have sparked significant debate. Our guest today has followed the issues surrounding the tax reform bills closely. He's a senior lecturer at the Federal Polytechnic, Oko, and he's a senior legislative aide to the President of the Nigerian Senate on petroleum and downstream matters. Please welcome with us Dr. Justin Ogo Nwankwo. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Good morning, and thanks for having me here. Thank you very much.
So I think a good way to begin will be to ask why this issue or why this bill has had this much controversy. The latest update, for the longest time, we heard the northern governors pushing back because they said it wasn't going to favor the northern region. And I was watching an interview on a sister station where one representative had spoken about it not just being political, but also it having a religious aspect to it. So you follow this from your observation and your perspective. Why do you think that these bills have generated this much discord?
Well, the truth is that for every period and for every time in the life of nations, especially developing nations like Nigeria, I majored so much in third world studies and development. So I know that it is critical that at a time like this, when you have a reformation leader like President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, some of the things that come on board, which normally the country, and especially its membership constituents or regions as they were, may not be as comfortable as they are, but these are what we call the burdens of leadership and also the pains of reformation. So if you follow the dynamics of third world movement of countries from its evolution stage, you will understand that there are certain reformations that will require difficult times and difficult understanding for the members of the country or citizens. This is exactly the crossroad where we are today in Nigeria. The tax reformation bill, I think it is critical that we understand the word reform. What it implies immediately from that name is that it's something that will not only usher in a new window for understanding a reality that has existed there, which is tax and all its concerns. But what is critical is that the debate you see it generating is because it touches the very foundation. It touches the very foundation of what the country is, and indeed of all the arguments and of all the shouts for what we call restructuring. So when you look at it, you see how it tends to drive a debate which is ongoing already at the National Assembly and virtually at all parts of the country. But the key thing eyes must be on the ball, that it is a reformative bill which aims to overhaul certain existing structures which we have already accepted as normal and usher in a window, a fresh air, or like they call it, a fresh window for an understanding of a new reality. So for me, the debates that are there, both at the National Assembly and even in the public arena, these are evidence that what is about to happen with the bill is something that once it generates this kind of debate, it means it has its overriding influence. It is topical, it is touching every nook and cranny of the country, and its results can be imagined, which I see from a very much positive angle. So the issues of what we may call talks or what we may call opinions from either the northern governors, leaders, for me, it is something that we must, as a matter of fact, which is already going on at the National Assembly, which we must place at the very seat of where the people are, which is at the NAS. And I think the leader, President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, is quite on it. You could see the candor, the demeanor upon which he's handling these issues, and you could see that as the meetings and the debates are going on, Nigerians will have the opportunity to really understand when we say tax reform, or even the incentives therein, or the dimensions and the calibrations of a new tax system for us. Everybody will understand that after the robust debate led by Senator Godswill Akpabio's leadership at the National Assembly, I think at the end of the day, Nigerians will benefit more. Let the debate continue, and let us all see where the entire discussion will end.
I think it's also important that you also help us share some of the merits of this bill that seem to be ignored, while all the deliberations are ongoing and the confusion. It is now being treated like it is an anti-North bill, just like my colleague had mentioned, like it is, politically motivated. But there's definitely certain, parts of it that are going to be beneficial, not just to one section of the country, but to the entire nation. It would be nice if you can highlight some of those aspects.
Okay, let me take it this way. When you look at it, I think for every bill, there's what we call the spirit of a bill and the letters of a bill. Let me say this because of my philosophical background. The spirit of the bill is to bring in the reformation. And now in the letters of the bill, you could see areas where I believe strongly is very critical for the development of this country. Number one is that you look at how the bill intends to open up one more time issues concerning the medium and the small scale enterprises, which of course is the foundation for the growth of any developing economy. You could see that from what we study as not only attribution and derivation, you could see that it is now a matter of each individual and indeed states trying to make is as good as what you call pay as you go. When you look at it, you see that the bill intends, number one, to open up small businesses. And for the states, especially what we call domicile states, to benefit more from what they are deriving. It returns us more to what you could call in the areas of regional government, where every state will have to look at what they are making and the VAT, the value added task, and then see the possibility of getting something out of it. It's not about making everything at the federal look a little bit. At the federal level, it appears everything is choked up at the federal level. And therefore, there is no room for small-scale businesses to thrive. There is also no room for even medium-scale businesses to thrive. With this reformation, every small-scale business, what it does is to open up an opportunity for the tax that are generated to be used, not only for infrastructural development, but also to create incentives for in areas like agriculture. Let me say this, with this bill, certain untapped areas, like in the north, where actually the core driving economic tool is agriculture. There are a lot of agricultural produce coming in from the north, which by virtue of the lax nature of the tax system that is now being under the crucible by this new reform, there is opportunity for this current tax bill to create opportunity for those who are in the agricultural sector, especially regions or states that are in this arena, to make enough value-added tax from what they are cultivating and what they are producing within their area. It is now left for the federal government, as the bill has envisaged, with the state governments to move into what you call a final finishing of the entire scenario, so that for states where you have enough of this agricultural produce, the reformation of the tax bill brings for them incentives that could also help them to develop their states. We cannot continue to rely on what you call the national cake. At the end of the day, it appears everything ends at the federal. With this tax reformation, it restores enough power. I must have to say this, and please note, it restores enough power to the states. It restores enough power to the state and drives what you call pay as you go. If your state has all it takes to generate opportunities in terms of industrialization, in terms of creating more multiple opportunities and businesses, then this is the job of state governors and indeed all those who are leaders in these areas to move down to the different regions and to the states and begin to create an environment where businesses can thrive. And then the consequent tax can come in and those states can make money out of it. You see, the issues in the new reformation, I call it a reformation bill, is that number one, you are opening up vast areas of opportunity for small-scale businesses. A lot of what you call Japan syndrome today is because most small-scale businesses are not thriving. And therefore, if you have a very wonderful reform tax system, each individual understands that the labor of my hands can also keep me not only in the country, but can also have a value. I do not need to transmit myself either to Lagos, Ogun, or Kaduna, or Kano, in order to make a living. So what it does is to create enough strength for these states everywhere to make their own businesses, create businesses, small and
if it is this simple, I mean, what you've stated now, I believe, should make it a very. Can hold on, Dr. Wanko. What you've stated now, you're not the first person who's narrated it this way and explained it this way. And what you've stated should make, this, seemingly a bill that, all state governors should be interested in. So what do you think is, the cause of the pushback that you're getting from the northern leaders and northern state governors? Are they getting a different interpretation of the bill?
No, they are not getting a different interpretation of the bill. I must have to tell you this. Some of the governors in the north are erudite scholars. If you look at I have listened to the governor, Professor Zulum, who is a professor erudite. They understand what you think I'm explaining now in a simple term. But the issue, like I said, is that this is a new system. The problem is that in the north, and I must have to say this with any sense of apology, in the north, and indeed in some parts of this country, not just in the north, there is a sense of what you call salary. When we say salary, it's not just the sense of salary is that which is what we call I call it an entitlement mentality. And this entitlement mentality is a very couched philosophical theory propounded by so many scholars. Now, what it does is to create a sense of it belongs to all. This is the way it is done. It will continue to be like this till thy kingdom come. What you see these northern governors and indeed some elites in the north doing is to allow a status quo. It has always been the case when you see arguments and indeed essays and scholars and the research on the idea of restructuring. What it does is that sometimes, just like this tax reform bill, they don't sometimes resist it because what it does is to recalibrate power. And this time around, the economic power. And they decide it to the idea of what you do or what you earn is also what the work you put in is what you earn. The governors in the north understand that with this tax reformation, the north, we need to do more. We don't need to rely, which is the case, over-reliant on oil and what it has cost the country up until now. It is now an opportunity, which I want to make it very clear for the northern elites to understand that this is an opportunity for the lofty ideas we enjoyed in the First Republic, where every region was more or less like projecting its strengths. Now, this time around, states. So what you are looking at in this pushback from the north is not a question, I must have to say, of lack of understanding, but a question of them not wanting to take more responsibility. Because with this tax reformation, every state, every governor, indeed even state house of assemblies, must begin to make laws to refrain or to resemble what is happening at the national stage. It means that everybody must have to go to work. It means that we have to be committed to what is happening in the state level and indeed at the local government level. This fear you are seeing exuding from the north is because of the nature of the politics of the north. Where you see that it does appear that everything that flows in from the center is divided just like they say allocation. This time allocation, derivation. But this time around there is what you call attribution. In this attribution, you are looking at what one is bringing to the table. We are not saying, and they know that nobody is saying that the North does not bring anything to the table. But what it demands is that let each part of the country, let each state of the country, let each constituent part of the country work as hard as they can to create, number one, businesses in their states. Let the state governments create opportunities to generate this. As there are some states, if you look at the allocation, you see that some appear to make more allocation apart from the general, even from the internal generated revenue. You could see what some of the states are bringing to the table.
All right. The current position now, the current position is that Dr. Wankwo, if I may proceed, please. The current situation is that the Senate has suspended actions on this tax reform, and they set up a committee to meet with the executive arm so that they can resolve the issues surrounding the bill. What are your expectations from this? You know, do you feel positive results will come out as a result of this meeting?
No, what you are seeing with the suspension and the discussion with the executive, what for me, I believe the leadership of the National Assembly, led by Senator Godswill Akpabio, GCON, is going to do is to what you call cross the T's and dot the I's. There are certain elements of the bill which I believe, if properly looked at, could also enhance the entirety of the bill. By having this meeting with the executive, what we are looking at is a responsible leadership of the Senate and the National Assembly. This is a bill coming from Mr. President. And those you see, especially from the north, and indeed some part of the south, who are agitating against this bill, what you are looking at is an opportunity to sit down with the executive and see the gray areas, or especially the tight areas where this bill could be loosened. I believe that it is the right way to go, and the expectation is simple. I must have to tell you, it's simple. In such a discussion, in such an understanding between the legislature and the executive, you could get one outcome, which is a more beneficial result to the constituents and to the citizens of this country. So we are looking forward to the leadership of the Senate. We rely on them. We believe in their capacity, and we are looking at an opportunity for them to have an understanding with the Mr. President and indeed his team, and then straighten up areas where some of these doubts may be coming from. Because the issues of derivation, the issues of what I call attribution, that is to say, what happens to the states? How do you now draw down the final benefits? The issues concerning moving some of the funds that are going to be directed to education, to infrastructure, and so on. How do we do it? I think that should be the area where the concerns will be moving at this point. Every constituent member of Nigeria, the states, we would want to know how are we carried along in this. Already it is there. It is in the public domain. It is a debate ongoing. What we are looking at is that the leadership of the National Assembly, heavily led by Senator Akpabio, we have a listening ear to see where actually core issues are coming from, especially from the representative constituents who are his colleagues. If these issues are ironed out with the executive, then we expect a new tax system, and indeed we expect further development and a little sense of belonging to all members of the country. That is my own expectation.
Yeah, all right. Dr. Justin Wankwo, thank you very much. We will follow this meeting. We hope that there is some positivity that emerges from it, and definitely would be looking forward to having you join us again to share your thoughts with us when we get more feed from the deliberations. Thanks for your time. All right. Now let's share with you what we've spoken about in the last hour, and also let you know what's coming next in the second half of Breakfast Central. This morning, President Tinubu orders a review of a controversial tax reform bill. And also we had Inibehe Effiong speaking with us about Dele Farotimi and his alleged incarceration by the court. NNPC declares the heir of operation of Port Harcourt Refinery. But that's not all this morning. We have a bit more coming your way in the second half of Breakfast Central.
Coming up next, Senate confirms appointment of Oluyede as the Chief of Army Staff. The newspaper front pages will be brought to you, and we'll open the phone lines for you to join in as well. And then I'll be bringing you what Nigerians are saying on X about some trending stories.
Now let's take you through the newspapers this morning and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Thursday morning. You're also welcome, remember, to join us via our phone lines. Let's hear your thoughts on these stories. We're kicking off with the Punch newspapers this morning. Of course, once again, tax reform. Senate suspends debate. Panel meets Attorney General today. Senate constitutes special committee to address concerns. Presidency urges urgent passage. Atiku, others knock police as court remands Dele Farotimi. PDP will teach APC lessons in Oyo, and Oshun says, well, I guess that's Governor Seyi Makinde. Naira devaluation raises foreign debt by 30 trillion naira, says a report. Federal government fires Togo and Benin degree holders from MDAs. Senate summons Keyamo over flight delays and others. And final story in the Punch this morning, fuel imports hit 2.3 billion liters despite local production. That's very fascinating. And that's, again, why I started the show this morning by reminding everyone that, if we do not get some clarity as to what exactly is going on in the Port Harcourt Refinery, there's many questions that will remain unanswered. And, do we have a timeline with which we are expected to work with? That if we, get full production, full refining, not blending, proper refining from the Port Harcourt Refinery, that we are certain that we would be able to cut down on our importation of petrol in the next 6 months or in the next 1 year. Is there projections like that that are being worked with? Are we certain that every week and every month there's a certain amount of, petrol that Port Harcourt Refinery will be able to supply to the Nigerian consumer and the Nigerian market? Do we expect that the emergence of the Port Harcourt Refinery will maybe also create some competition in the market and have Dangote drop its price from 970, further? If the NNPC or, oil marketers getting from Port Harcourt Refinery are then able to say, okay, we're going to be selling 900, because we don't even at this point have any clarity as to what has led to the 970 naira per liter price. With all the arguments as to why, petrol production in Nigeria is, so expensive. I remember, I think it was, I can't remember which of the House of National Assembly members that did a report, that shared that, or that showed rather, that Nigeria's cost of oil production seems to be the highest in the world, where I think the average was about $7 or $9 or 10. I don't remember. I apologize for not getting the figures right, but Nigeria was something $40-something per barrel. And so these things are important, that the Nigerian government, makes clear to the Nigerian people. And it's not necessarily saying that anybody is lying or anybody is being honest, but there are too many aspects of the whole conversation that still are not clear and still, seem to be, shrouded in some level of secrecy or the other. And, again, it's the reason that I said that I think that one of the core things that this administration should do for Nigerians, if we will be able to stomach what we find, it would be great if we don't find anything incriminating. But it is a proper auditing of many of Nigerian government agencies. Fisher Sheyombo is in the news again this morning, is on X, by the way, putting up more revelations, accusing the customs officers in Nigeria of once again facilitating, according to Fisher Sheyombo, facilitating the smuggling of bags of rice, into Nigeria. He of course put out a tweet about maybe 30 minutes or an hour ago. Once again putting out those accusations, and it once again puts fuel to me saying that a proper auditing needs to be done. That if these accusations by Fisher Sheyombo are true, then you wouldn't necessarily doubt that other things are maybe being smuggled into Nigeria. You wouldn't also necessarily doubt when people say that they do not trust that the amount of crude oil being produced in Nigeria is exactly the numbers that the NNPC shares with the Nigerian public. And that there's, no more smuggling of crude oil, across the shores of Nigeria to vessels that are parked in the high seas. It's difficult for you to convince anyone that those things do not happen if the accusations by Fisher Sheyombo are, eventually proven to be true. And I hope that the Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Ojo, actually does have that conversation with Fisher Sheyombo. I remember that he had invited him. I don't know where they went with that, how far they went with that. But I hope that he does have that conversation with him. Because again, if there's anything that Nigerians would like that this administration does, it is to expose the rot, the alleged rot and the alleged, stealing that goes on behind closed doors in Nigeria through the different ministries, departments, and agencies, different institutions of government. To expose that rot. One of the things I've repeatedly said is that corruption is not fought with the EFCC. That's not the way you fight corruption. It's not, by simply arresting people and going through a 3, 4, 5 year, court process. That's not the way you fight corruption. You fight corruption by setting up institutions that actually make it difficult for people to steal, make it hard for things to be smuggled through your borders, make it hard for estates to be built, 753 duplexes to be built behind closed doors with fake names and fake, information. That's the way that corruption is fought. Make it difficult. Set up institutions, set up, processes, systems that make it difficult. Not the EFCC. EFCC, ICPC, great that they exist, but that's not the way you fight corruption. It's a huge deceit to the Nigerian people to continue to just convince them that, the FCC has made great busts this year. We've recovered, 200 billion naira. That is not solving the problem. Since the existence of the EFCC since 2003, we've not seen a significant drop in the stealing that goes on in Nigeria. So it's not the EFCC that fights corruption. And this auditing, these systems, these, investigations must go on across the major institutions and MDAs across Nigeria. But again, fuel import hit 2.3 billion liters despite local production. And that's the last story on the Punch newspapers this morning.
All right, let's move away from the Punch to the next paper. And the next paper this morning is the Daily Trust, I believe, yes. On the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, Senate AGF to review tax reform bills today. Public hearing suspended indefinitely, and that's a story that we took earlier, sharing with you that public hearing has been suspended and a committee has been set up to liaise with the executive arm of the government to be able to ensure that they sort out all the issues surrounding the bill. I was speaking about an interview I was watching on another media station where the guest was invited to talk about the bill. And part of what the guest had then spoken about was the fact that not only is there a political angle to the conversation, but he had just found out that there's also a religious angle to the conversation. And part of the religious angle is because according to the law in the north, I think it's the Sharia law or thereabout, but according to their religious beliefs, that when a person dies, that it affects the inheritance. That's what he was told, that a number of the northern leaders, they were told him that it affects inheritance. So when they have, and the key example was you have millions of naira to give over to hand over to your children, that there's a certain way in which their laws and their religion states that it must be distributed among the kids. But that now, if you have that money, you now have to remove a certain chunk to pay to the government so that it affects inheritance. So, and in a way affects what their religion prescribes when it comes to inheritance. So it's just really a number of issues that keep sparking debates around the tax reform bills. And these are still being, they're still being talked about. The paper still says that the new committee is an aberration. We'll see how things turn out with the committee that's been set up and the interaction with the executive arm of government. Still speaking about the tax reform bill, how tax reform bills put Barrow on the spot. Staff opted for voluntary retirement, according to CBN. Now, this is another story that has been like a big deal when it comes to, the media. There had been conversations about Central Bank of Nigeria giving people the right to making offerings to the tune of about 50 billion naira and, giving them the opportunity to retire early. And there was a bit of, they called it a mass retirement program that was going on, and that a number of people were going to leave. But Central Bank of Nigeria said that its early exit package for staff of the bank is entirely voluntary and that participation is not mandatory. So it's only for those who really want to leave. There was someone who said he was offered 97 million naira to leave. If you are given that kind of offering in New Central here, and they tell you that, you either continue or if you retire now, they're going to give you a huge chunk, maybe to the tune of 97 million naira. Will you take it? It's the way he's thinking about it. It's an option to consider.
The work that I do here is not money motivated. It's driven by the need for and the fight for a better Nigeria. No, I would not. I would reject it because I know that Nigeria needs voices like mine
And it's not really all about money. I mean, money comes and goes. At the end of the day, it's the work that you do that matters.
Absolutely.
And the legacy that you leave behind.
I'm working pro bono here, by the way.
All right. We'll bring updates on the CBN story, where they've said that staff have opted for voluntary retirement. 12 burnt to death in Yobe road accident. Really, really unfortunate incident. You can see a picture here. You can see the picture of a car having, there's an accident here, and you can see really, really bad. The car looks charred and damaged, and 12 people burnt to death. We pray for their families and those who are mourning their loss, and even for the states and the country in general. You know, we need to look
the picture is actually different. It's from an explosion.
Into the picture, it's saying remains of a car conveying people to, I can't see the name of the town. It ran into an explosive development by terrorists along a certain village in Zamfara State. My goodness. Lakurawa is responsible for the Zamfara explosion, according to the police. Okay, so this picture is for that story there. Really sad. Lakurawa started like a joke, and now it's become a major conversation about the impact that Lakurawa has in terms of not just constituting another terrorist or insurrection, but also the ability to then influence young people, brainwash young people, and take a number of them into their care.
So you could highlight that part, but for me, right, it's the fear with which I'm seeing almost a repeat of how it always happens, which is, a new name emerges, it's in the news, a couple of weeks later you start to hear of killings and abductions, and then now we're talking about, explosions. And my worry really is that, this Lakurawa group, for the longest time we've spoken about, we are not security experts, but we've had security experts join us, and share their views on how the fight against insurgency, would be won, and the different tactics with which the Nigerian government and Nigerian security forces need to continue to take in order to win that fight. But one of the things really that has been highlighted for the longest time is that these terror groups in Nigeria, these insurgent groups, seem to have, an unhindered access to arms and ammunition and IED production materials. I don't know that we've been able to, and when I have these conversations, I always give kudos to Nigerian security forces and say that, with respect to those who have, given their lives and given, their all to ensure that we remain safe, respect them. But I don't know that we've done enough in order to stop access to weapons and ammunition and the materials that are used to create these IEDs. And it's scary to hear that, of course, there's still terror groups making bombs in Nigeria. But let's quickly bring in Lenin, who's joining us from the FCT. Good morning.
Good morning, Lenin. Please go ahead.
Please, I don't want to bring down about Nigerian issue. There's issue in Kubwa here in the FCT. Kubwa Expressway, there is no street light. The street lights are not working again for months now. It has not been working. At night, the place is very, very dark. Kubwa Expressway, that's immediately after Gwarimpa to days. There is no street light working. Please, the FCT minister should help us and help the people of Arab Road. There's a bridge in Arab Road that connects that Tata Estate and other prominent estates. There's enough refuse dump there, and it's not looking good for a capital city of Abuja. Please, they should do something about these Bola boys, because they will just collect the refuse and dump it on the road. The refuse is gradually taking over the road. Please, the FCT and the authority of the FCT, please, they should do something about it. And that place, there's been several reports that people are being attacked at night because, one, the place is dirty, the place has been taken over by miscreants, and there's no security light. Please, they should do something about it for us. Thank you.
For highlighting that. I'm hoping that the FCC minister is listening to that. We'll talk about it. There obviously needs to be street lights there. When we're talking about road accidents, I mean, it's a number of the stories we've highlighted in the papers. These are some of the causes of road accidents. You're driving on roads, the roads have potholes, the roads have no street lights, and these are roads in some cases that are ridiculously wide. So because of how wide they are, you can't even control the movement of, and even we see that in some cases here in Lagos, you know, where there's a bit of challenge with the traffic lights and the street lights. So we certainly are glad that Lenin called to share that thought. I want to quickly wrap up the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Federal government declares special end-of-year train services for Nigerians. And ex-Kwara Governor Ahmed misappropriated 5 billion Naira UBEC fund, according to witnesses. The way they just called these numbers, and it just sounds like a very casual figure. We just hear millions and billions being thrown around. Misuse of 5 billion Naira. Anyway, that's all on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Let's now move on to the next paper.
All right. Now, the Daily Independent newspapers this morning, it says here, once again, tax reform bills. Senate raises committee to meet federal government delegation over gray areas, says it won't suspend bills to aggravate country's problems. Suspends public hearing on other issues related to the bills. Nigeria, other African airlines climbed 10.4% in passenger travel in October 2024. Court remands Dele Faotimi for allegedly defaming Afe Babalola, beg your pardon. CBN dismisses forced retirement claims, says staff exit voluntary. Oshun, to people rather, to teach APC a lesson, Makinde boasts. Sure, they said the same thing in Edo State. Benue killing, Senate calls for restriction of cattle movement nationwide. Tax reform bills, Kwesu cautions for the government against negative implications on TED Fund. I think these are the major stories on the Daily Independent. We have the leadership newspapers, not very many stories that we can find there.
Yeah, not a lot of stories. But on the front page of the leadership newspaper, we can see the story there. Manufacturers Economic Index drops in Q3. Then we also have here, bandits plant explosives along Zamfara Road, kill 12. We took that earlier when we looked at the Daily Trust, and you could see the picture there on the front page showing, you know, exactly what the true picture of that, the explosion, the havoc it wreaked on the vehicle and, you know, just and the people, and it's a really, really sad story. Tax reform bills. CSOs kick as federal government blames opposition on ignorance. Senate suspends legislation to meet presidential team. ACF lifts suspension on chairman. No staff forced on early retirement, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. Senate tasks security agencies on arms proliferation. UNICEF lauds Jigawa's 30% budget allocation to education. And we have here this Abbas, you know, says we should move beyond women inclusion by 2027. The Speaker of the House of Representatives said this on Wednesday, assuring the international community that by 2027, some gender-based demands by women would have been legalized in the 1999 Constitution. He gave this assurance in Abuja while addressing a delegation of United Nations. And I find that this is a very interesting conversation because representation of women in politics has been one that has gone on for the longest time. We have never had a woman that has been elected into office as a governor in Nigeria, elected, not necessarily someone who took over maybe because something happened to the governor, but an elected woman. You know, if you look at the current reality of what we have 366 House of Rep members, and of these, 16 are women. We have the senators, 109 senators, only 4 are women. So the odds are not really in favor of women when it comes to female representation in politics. Look at Namibia. Namibia has elected its first female president, and I really, really applaud that. I was very excited when I saw that news. I'm looking forward to a Nigeria that will be ready for women's participation in politics, a Nigeria that will be ready for female leadership. Not necessarily because they are women. Yes, there's an argument to that, but because there are women who are capable of holding these offices. You see what happened at the last elections.
What do you think, has made those numbers so small?
Because for the long, there is definitely a gap. There's been a gap when you're trying to overturn what the culture has been, or what the tradition has been. It will take a while, it will take deliberate effort, it will take advocacy, it will take allies speaking up for. So what the current, there has been a system of, oh, this is how things have been done, you know, this is how things have been done. We've had more men represented in politics. Yes, for a while, there weren't a number of women that were interested. There's also the system that, in a way, in some cases, doesn't favor women, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I interviewed a woman, I'm trying to remember her name now, I can't remember. It wasn't in 2023 elections, it was the election before that. She ran for office, and I interviewed her, and I asked what her challenges were. She was running for president. And she said to me that a number of the challenges were that, one, they would say to her things like, your focus should be your family, go home, attend to your husband, attend to your children. So they obviously belittled her capability to participate in elections and to hold electoral positions, because they believe that her role as a woman is to look after her family. And then a number of the political meetings were set at night. Typically, you know, in the middle of the night, the assumption is that, oh, you know, they'll fix it at odd hours, and then these women can't come out at these odd hours for several reasons. The safety of being able to be at night. We don't speak much about how women feel unsafe to be out at weird hours of the night, right? So there's that, and there's the fact that, yes, a number of them, because of culture and tradition, have been made primary caregivers of their children, so they cannot be out at this night. So there's like an old boys club in politics that doesn't give a number of women the opportunity to be able to stand and speak and take elective positions. And truly, some of them, when they come out, even the ridiculous fees they have to pay to buy office, to buy forms to run for office, the system of godfatherism, how many godfathers will throw their weight behind a woman. So it's just a lot of odds that have been stacked against women in politics. But with constant conversations, advocacy, interest in politics, even by the women, I'm hoping that in the nearest future we'll see a change.
All right.
You don't agree?
I mean, you've said most of what needs to be said. Yet I don't necessarily agree, you know, with certain aspects of it. You know, I feel like, for example, Natasha Akpoti, you know, fought her way through it and she eventually made it. So I believe that it's not necessarily holding back every woman who, you know, believes that they want to get into politics. It's not an easy, you know, place to play. The men who also get into politics don't find it easy either. You know, a lot of them, I mean, they go through hell. We might criticize the process, no doubt, but you know, we should also just you know not make it seem like it is a kiddies playground for the men either. You know, so I agree that there are certain aspects that make it, you know, that seem to be like hurdles for women that aren't there for men. I totally agree with that, but at the same time, it's not like everybody just completely shuts down women when they decide to run for office.
But they actually do in a number of cases. And when we talk about equity, right, for me, I would say, and I think this is my final thought on the matter, when it comes to equity, and equity in this case is being able to say, the both of us are trying to watch the screen, we're trying to watch TV, or we're trying to watch a show. Maybe you're not as tall as I am. Being able to put you on the platform that gives you the opportunity to be able to see the screen as clearly as I would see the screen, because you don't have access to that. So when those are the kind of things that women are pushing for when they talk about that 5% affirmative action, when they're talking about having more men speak up as allies, to be able to speak up for women and show up for women and throw their weight behind women. There's some women that would not get endorsements or people supporting them, but because of, I mean, the current system that we run, right? But if 1, 2, 3 men came out and say, oh, I endorse this woman, I throw my weight behind this woman, we can't deny the fact about what the current reality is. The tide will be able to turn more in our favor. The current politics that we run has a lot to do with, you know, influence, and sometimes influence of individuals, you know.
So again, it's not disregarding, you know, and I'm sure that even Natasha Akpoti that I highlighted, if you ask her, she would also tell you how difficult it was for her. So it's not disregarding, you know, those aspects that exist. I totally agree with it. Many people would maybe not necessarily agree with the fact that, oh, you know, because she has to take care of kids, that's why she cannot be a governor. A lot of people wouldn't necessarily agree with that. A lot of people wouldn't agree with the, you know, oh, because your meetings are held at night, you know, and so she can come out at night. That's not, I don't think that's a strong argument that is being made for why women would not, you know, get into politics.
No, because you don't understand the risk of being out at night.
No, please.
You won't understand that.
It's not a serious argument.
It is a serious argument.
No, it's not. No, and I don't agree that majority of political meetings are held at 2 a.m. That's not true. These are statements that are made, to sell a narrative, which I understand again, but there's no data that shows that most political meetings are held at night by 2, 3 a.m. and that's why women can't.
You know what we should do, and I'm hoping that our producers can factor this into conversation. We should have a conversation about women's participation in politics and bring the actual active players in the industry.
I feel like the hurdles that you're speaking of are not the hurdles that should be mentioned. That are the real issues. That's the point.
You can't say that. First of all, if you bring the argument about meetings at night, for example, you don't understand. And I'm telling you, as somebody who has interviewed women who ran for office, and these are some of the complaints that I had.
That held meeting at night that they couldn't be there.
These are some of the factors, and I know you will disregard it, but you don't understand the discomfort that it puts. It's just like when people disregard women who say, "Oh, women don't feel safe to do exercises around their estate," and they're like, "Oh, come off it. It's just a random excuse that women make." But it is the truth. As a woman myself, when I'm working at night, the moment I start to see somebody at my back, and I feel somebody walking behind me, I feel unsafe.
Here's my point. Tell me, convince me, right, that, so we're taking too much time on this. Convince me that
because we need to move.
If there are 1,000 political gatherings that need to be held in your journey between getting your party's ticket, campaigning, for your primaries, getting your party's ticket, going through the electoral process, all of that, convince me that there are 1,000. 800 of them are held at 2 a.m.
What you're doing, though, is belittling the fact that I have mentioned several other hurdles. And you
I just said that I recognize those ones.
No, you don't. What you're saying is, all the hurdles you mentioned are not the hurdles, because you did say that.
No, I said those two. I said
no, you did not say any two.
That's what I said. That these two will not be. I said that there are other things.
But so what are the other things? Seeing as you understand, the hurdles that women.
There's definitely the ones you mentioned about society not necessarily accepting women in leadership. 100%, that is true. That happens in our society. The fact that many men would not want to be behind, and sponsor and fund a woman, because it's an expensive process. That is also very, very true. But again, it's not because, meetings are held at night. That's not it. There's other things, right?
But I have mentioned the other things. I mentioned a ton of things.
Which I said that I agree, and I don't disregard all those other things. But those particular two is what I'm highlighting.
So the particular
that
two
those
they are talking about is the meeting at night and what again?
And the fact that she has kids, so she cannot, compete.
I never said she has kids, but is men saying that, she should go and face her family? It's not. You don't think that people say that? If the president, the one-time president of this country, was said that the place of his wife is in the kitchen, and in the other room, you're saying that really men never say that women's role is to look after their families and not to run for office?
So that is pretty much linked to the very first one, which is that a lot of people would not want to support.
So that means that cancels your argument of two things that I've said, because if you're admitting that society does believe that a number of women should not be running for office because their place is in the house taking care of their family.
I'm not denying that. I already said that. The argument is not the strong argument that you have, right, about the night one. I think we've talked about that already.
The conclusion is that the only thing you don't agree with is the night one.
I don't necessarily agree with the kids one either.
That the role of the woman is to be taking care of her family and her kids.
It depends on how it's...
yourself.
No. It depends on how it is said. Apologies for taking too much time on this. It depends on how it is said. If it is said as, society believes that women should, be in the kitchen, just like, former president said, and in the other room. Yes, that exists.
Potato.
No, hold on. That exists. If it is that, from what you said, or the way you said it, that, she wouldn't have time because she has, to look after kids. I don't. That's the part that I don't agree with.
Permit me to say that this sounds
Dora Akunyili had kids.
It sounds a tad mischievous because you are taking away from the
Dora
spirit.
Dora Akunyili had kids.
Of course, I'm saying I would never say that. I'm telling you what people say, that the woman should be able to take care of her family rather than running for office, and that definitely is in line with the fact that society perceives, and society is not yet at a place where they are ready for women to take leadership position. So those things are the same. It's potato. And this is a conversation that we have to have.
How you say it is very, very important.
It's a conversation that we have to have on the show. And I hope our producers are taking note. We will then bring in active players in the field. I'll bring in women who are running for office to come and speak to this. But let us know your thoughts as well. You can tweet at us individually via our handles on X, and you can tweet at News Central. But now let's move to X and share with you what Nigerians are saying. Dele Faratimi, the lawyer, activist, and all-round thorn in the side of the political elite, was arrested on the 2nd of December 2024 by police from Ekiti State over allegations of defamation and cyberbullying. He was arrested in Lagos and then hauled off to Ekiti State. Faratimi, known for his fiery critiques of government policies, has extended it to the judiciary in his book titled Nigeria and Its Criminal Justice System. In the book, Faratimi reportedly made some unflattering comments about one of Nigeria's top legal eagles, Chief Afe Babalola SAN, the founder of Afe Babalola University, and for many, a towering figure in Nigerian law. According to Babalola, Faratimi defamed him in the book by alleging that he corrupted the Supreme Court to get a fraudulent judgment in the service of his client. And the saga doesn't stop there. Faratimi, who had cooperated with the police in Lagos before, now finds himself remanded in the Ado-Ekiti Correctional Center. He pleaded not guilty to 16 counts of defamation. The trial chief magistrate Abayomi Adeosun ordered that he be remanded in the Ado-Ekiti Correctional Center for him to file a formal bail application. He adjourned the case till Tuesday, the 10th of December, for the court to hear the bail application. But here's the kicker. The book, which is the subject of the libelous matter, which was published in Lagos, not Ekiti. So why, pray tell, was he hauled all the way to Ekiti for charges allegedly stemming from a publication in Lagos? Why did the police take people's phones whilst making the arrest? Or is still the more appropriate term to be used here? Is it okay for the police to threaten to shoot civilians, point a gun at them, and slap them whilst they're trying to effect an arrest? An arrest that was prompted by a book about Nigeria's criminal justice system, a system many would argue could use a little bit of justice itself. The irony. The Nigerian Bar Association has lent its voice to the ongoing issue, stating that libel is not a crime and calling for the release of Dele Faratimi. They argued that previously, defamation was criminalized under the criminal code applicable in southern Nigeria. However, Lagos State modernized its criminal law framework through the enactment of the Criminal Law of Lagos 2011, aligning with global best practices that treat defamation as a civil wrong, not a criminal offense. The case reference here being the Supreme Court's position in Aviomo versus the Commissioner of Police and another in 2021. As expected, there's been a flurry of reactions on social media. In more cases, however, it's been a wave of outrage by activists, political leaders, and ordinary citizens. Here's what Nigerians are saying. The first tweet is from Chidi Odinkalu, and Chidi Odinkalu says, "So, let me get this. The allegation is that Dele Faratimi committed criminal defamation by making claims in his book that someone corrupted the judicial process in Ekiti. And in response to this, they corrupted police NG to jail him in Ekiti." And, there's the laughter emoji. We also have Ayo Shogunro, who says, or Ugunna Ejikem, who says, Land case, 5 years in court. EFCC case versus politicians, 10 years in court. Defamation case against journalists pushed by a wealthy man, 72 hours in court. Dele Farotimi was right. The Nigerian justice system is criminal. We have another tweet from Lola Okunrin, who says, they hurriedly sent Farotimi to prison, bundled him from Lagos to Ekiti, set up a case before a magistrate, sharp, someone who was still talking about judiciary corruption in his book, and you proved him right with your own case. This is poetic. I can't believe it, he says. Renu Odwala also lent her voice to the conversation, and Renu says, Dele Farotimi was abducted from Lagos to Ekiti, arraigned in a court, and remanded in a prison in 24 hours. All these in a country where politicians are walking free and thousands are awaiting trial. This is not a country, she says. And the next tweet is from Daniel Rega, who says, Dele Farotimi's prosecution was swift, just like Yahaya Bello. Just like that, he's been sent to prison. But the likes of Yahaya Bello, Godwin Emefiele, and other political looters are nowhere near sentencing. Pathetic justice system. And the next tweet is from Alhaji Yenka, who says, you might think the Dele Farotimi issue has nothing to do with you, but dangerous trends like this puts power in the hands of the highest bidder. It will trickle down quickly. Someone can hit your car tomorrow, and even though they are guilty, you'll be the one behind bars. The Amnesty International Nigeria arm has also spoken about this, and they say, Dele Farotimi must be immediately and unconditionally released. In custody of Nigeria police, there is little hope of fair treatment and no transparency. Police interrogation centers are also notorious locations of possible violations. Our next tweet is from Maurice Moye, who says, the arrest of Dele Farotimi is condemned. If there are personal issues, the law courts are available. Oppression everywhere must be resisted, no matter whose ox is God. And we have Miss Pearl, who says, this is beyond defamation. The establishment is testing their limits. You are speaking too loud. You are breathing too deep. Your dentition is too wide. Every excuse in the book to kill the spirit of the people. Free Dele Farotimi now. Another person who's also spoken about this is Ayo Shogunro, and Ayo Shogunro says, Dele Farotimi wrote a book about corruption in the criminal justice process, implicating Afe Babalola, and both him and the Nigerian police thought the smart thing to do was to prove him right by making him another victim of the criminal justice process. Thuggery behavior. Well, that's the tweets, and we'll keep you posted on that. And just to let you know that you can catch up with News Central's exclusive coverage of our interview with Dele Farotimi on our YouTube channel. In other news, Dele Farotimi's book has been publicized in ways he probably could not have imagined. So maybe that's a positive light at the end of the tunnel for him. But we'll keep tracking this story, and we'll be sure to share with you what Nigerians are saying.
Thanks very much to Olive for that, and of course sharing the popular reactions to the case against Dele Farotimi, and of course the last 72 hours. Moving on, the Nigerian Senate has confirmed Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as the substantive Chief of Army Staff. This confirmation came after the Senate Committee on Army, led by Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua, screened Oluyede and deemed him highly qualified for the position. Yaradua said the committee was impressed with the high level of understanding, achievement, and excellence stated in the credentials of the nominee.
The Senate Committee on Nigerian Army, having diligently and meticulously conducted the screening of the nominee according to the Constitution, and being satisfied with his conduct, competence, experience, and educational qualification, hereby recommend to the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as follows: that Lieutenant General Olufemi Olatubosun Oluyede be confirmed as the Chief of Army Staff, having successfully undergone the screening process of this committee. Distinguished colleagues, will the Senate confirm the nomination of Lieutenant General Olufemi Olatunbosun Oluide for appointment as Chief of Army Staff? Those in support of the confirmation say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Lieutenant General Olufemi Olatunbosun Oluide is hereby confirmed as Chief of Army Staff. Successes and progress, and do hope and pray that through this appointment, insecurity will be abated or minimized to the barest minimum, and Nigeria shall know peace.
Oluide, who was the acting Chief of Army Staff, takes office following the demise of his predecessor, Lieutenant General Tarid Lagbaja. Nigeria's security challenges have been heightened, and many Nigerians are looking to see the positive changes that Oluide will bring in his new role. And of course, I think it's important, that just a few minutes ago we mentioned in the newspapers the bomb explosion that took place allegedly or reportedly done by the new terror group Lakurawa that has been terrorizing parts of Sokoto and Kebbi states. And so the Chief of Army Staff definitely has his work cut out for him, along with other Nigerian security agencies. And I did express concerns that I'm sure I'm not the only one who has, that we hope that this new group doesn't continue to expand and continue to grow and continue to create chaos and terror in those parts of Nigeria. Sometime in 2015 or 2016, if you remember, when there was a reduction in the report of bomb blasts exploding in parts of northern Nigeria, a security expert then had said that it's maybe not necessarily because the terror groups had been completely destabilized. It's maybe because they had simply just decided to change tactics. But that was his opinion. Why I'm sharing that this morning is because it's scary to hear about the use of improvised explosive devices by terror groups. And we hope and pray that it doesn't go beyond the ones that have been reported in the news this morning. We would like to see that Nigeria's security forces completely tackle these groups and chase them out of Nigeria. The reports every now and then about dozens of them neutralized or killed doesn't seem to I always like to give security agencies kudos, and I hope that there is a change in the story and the narratives concerning security issues in Nigeria.
Right.
I've repeatedly said that these groups do not make their weapons in Nigeria. Their routes with which these guns and these ammunition, these different grades of ammunition get into Nigeria to be used by these terror groups. And the Nigerian government must ensure that that passage is completely cut out. The funding also must be traced and must be cut out. And, if these parts are not addressed immediately, we may never see an end to these stories.
I just want to double check the leadership newspaper that said Senate tasks security agencies on arms proliferation. So yes, that's a very key point that you've raised. We must start to look at the areas and take investigations seriously, investigations of journalists, who put their lives on the line to go and tell very difficult stories. Journalists like Fisayo Shoyombo, who go out there and make these discoveries about, how things are being passed through the border. So if they can pass rice through the border, they can pass gun and they can pass ammunition through the border. So we must take these investigations seriously and not just treat them carelessly. When we hear stories like this, we must ensure that, they would act on these stories to do proper investigation, but also just to applaud, we wish him a great time as he takes over from where Lagbaja, who is now unfortunately, diseased, as he takes over from, where Lagbaja stopped. And just to also say, we appreciate the work that the armed forces is doing. By the 15th of January, we all will be wearing the poppy, to celebrate Armed Forces Remembrance Day here in Nigeria. So we just want to say that we appreciate the armed forces, not just them, but their families, because it's so much sacrifice. I oftentimes would ask myself if I could have married a member of the Nigerian Armed Forces, and I don't know if my answer is yes, because not only are they sacrificing their family members, their spouses, their children are sacrificing, because every day they go and come back, it's a miracle. For every day they go, there's a high chance that they will not return home. So to members, our viewers who have members of the armed forces as their family members, we want to say thank you for the sacrifices that you also make for our country. Absolutely. And it's a great note for us to wrap up the show this morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again same time tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And remember that you can continue conversations via our social media handle at News Central TV. By God's grace, we'll see you tomorrow. I am Olive Emodi.
And I am Osaogie Ogbawa.